Hello fellow psychonauts, and welcome to Interbeing Arts Halloween special. I did say I was going to do another video, but that would require scripting. If you think I should be writing scripts again, please write a letter to my university. For now, that video is stored away with all my other video ideas that I'll get to in this box. So on this occasion, I wanted to share some safety tips on how to trip on Halloween. Because Halloween is such a vibe, it's aligned with a lot of traditions across many cultures, including the pagan tradition of Samhain. So the date is just ripe with good, fun, and trippy experiences. But as a disclaimer, I am not saying that you personally should trip on Halloween, because I think there are plenty of other ways to have fun on this occasion. But I know a lot of people do like to take this opportunity to experiment with their minds with different chemical substances. So here are just some of my thoughts on how to do that safely and to optimize the fun. So there's going to be some rudimentary stuff that's going to be obvious safety tips for any psychedelics at any time of year. First, and probably the most important one, is knowing the substance. Each substance has different doses and different effects. All psychedelics aren't built the same. That being said, substances like LSD and mushrooms deliver a psychedelic experience that you could go to a party with or just have a nice hike on. Whereas other substances like DMT and salvia are the type of substances that you would want to have a calm environment, probably in your own bedroom, not really doing that outside, and it's a much more short and intense experience. So it really doesn't take too much research. If you just set aside a half hour, you could probably find any and all information on the substance that you're looking for on Google, and good sources usually come up first. Avoid the anti-drug websites as they tend to be very biased. Get those good, neutral, objective websites. I would leave links in the description if I could. This leads to the other basic large categories of set and setting. First, I'll cover set. Set is your state of mind, where you are at emotionally. You want to make sure that there's nothing too stressful going on in your life, that you're not too elevated or in a negative mood. If you're overly anxious about the experience, then it might just not be the right time for you to take it. Being in the right mentality really is so fundamental to any psychedelic experiences. But also, along with set is also your intentions with the experience. If you're looking to go to a party or go wander the streets or do a ceremony outside, you would probably want to do LSD or mushrooms at a particular range of dose, so you can relatively keep your feet on the ground and keep yourself safe from any possible dangers out there. Whereas if you want to go for the deep dive, again, you would want to do that in the comfort of a safe environment where no one's gonna walk and find you and you're not gonna hurt yourself. So setting is the direct environment that you take the psychedelics in. A lot of times you might start in one setting and shift your setting as the trip goes on if you are doing a substance that has many hours of duration, or if you have plans that night. And be flexible with those plans, because you might find that once you start peaking or you find yourself in the midst of the experience, you might not want to go to that party, or you might not want to go to that location you once said you did. So make sure you're able to be flexible with that. And another really fundamental thing that should be included with set and setting, sometimes it gets lumped in with setting, is who you surround yourself with. Me personally, I like to know the people I'm tripping with so that I know I can trust them. I don't particularly like tripping with strangers. If you're meeting together in a group, I tend to like taking the same substance at the same dose so that everyone's at like about the same experience level. If it's strong enough, you might want someone to be sober and trip sitting. There can be a lot of people that don't have proper psychedelic etiquette of like not trying to freak you out or not being a jerk or getting into trouble or whatever, or just even just giving you bad vibes, you know? And that being said, I highly advocate that if you start tripping with the same group, that you should stay together as a group for the night, or at least for the duration of the psychedelic experience. If someone strays away from the group, that person could find themselves in a not so safe environment or situation, which can be avoided if everyone sticks together and make sure everyone is okay. I mean, it's one thing if someone's like, hey, I want to go over here for a little bit, and everyone can kind of like give that person their space. Yeah, just generally speaking, I think it's good to stick together and make sure that everyone is kept all right. Basically have each other's backs. It's not that I have any grievance against any particular substances that aren't psychedelics. It's just that if everyone's taking a different substance, then everyone doesn't quite know where each other is at. It's more difficult to gauge where everyone is at psychologically and emotionally, I find. And of course, it's good to always have your phone on you, especially if you're going out. I personally recommend putting it on power saving mode, as it does stretch the battery life, but also because it puts your phone in a more basic mode, which when you're of an altered mind state, it can be really hard to navigate your phone. All the social media notifications can be very distracting. I honestly don't think tripping on social media is a good idea, because often distressing things come up in the news that might just like totally ruin your experience. Who knows, you know, you want to stay focused on your experience and not be pulled into what's going on in the greater world around you. Again, that's just my personal take. Just have the basic text SMS, very basic and straightforward. It really helps out a lot when you're of an altered mind. You might also want to bring a backup flashlight in case you go out into the forest or go somewhere dark. A lot of the Halloween events happen at night, so you want to be prepared with a flashlight. I know it's usually on your phones now, but it doesn't hurt. It's also really good to have a change of clothes, not just in case your socks get wet. It might be warmer or colder than you expect. There's nothing worse than being out where you want to be, except you're not dressed appropriately. You over or underdressed. You can also just dress in layers. And again, if you are going out, you probably want to secure a ride and know where you're sleeping that night. These substances do tend to give a lot of energy, and I don't know, me speaking personally, tend to keep me awake for till the wee hours of the night. Although it can have the opposite effect and really put you in a drowsy state. It really blows being out somewhere where you wanted to have a good time, but now you just want to go to sleep and you don't know where you're sleeping, and it's hard to communicate where you're going. So yeah, it's good to have that figured out first. And if you're going to be in a place that you need a ride back from, make sure you have a sober either trip sitter or someone you're in connection with that can come pick you up, or have the means to pay for a taxi or be able to take a bus. These are things that would be really beneficial to plan ahead. If you're planning on dressing up, I feel like the costumes and the decorations really will play a big part of your experience. I think first you should check any phobias that you might have. For example, if you're afraid of clowns, there might be a lot of clowns out that night, and therefore it might not be a good idea to trip if you would find that very upsetting. If you are just generally scared or like turned off by costumes, these types of decorations you find distressful, again, it's probably not a good idea to trip outside where all those things are, and stay in an environment where you can stage your own aesthetic and vibe. And if you're dressing up, also check up with your friends if they have any phobias. I bring up clowns again because that's a common one, but don't dress up as a clown if you're going to be meeting up to trip and then find out that one of your friends has a big thing against them or something. Just be considerate of that and don't belittle it. You know, like these things can invoke quite a lot of anxiety. And also when you're dressing up, please avoid being appropriative of any cultures. It's not really good to dress up as another person's culture. In my opinion, it's just pretty distasteful, especially Native and Indigenous culture. Please do not dress up as Indigenous people. Kill that market. That also goes if you are planning to do any pagan or magic ritual. It's good to know the history and where the elements of your ritual come from. You don't want to appropriate certain cultures' beliefs that you don't really know too much about. You want to pay respects to the cultures that you are appropriating. I only have a couple more tips. I should have mentioned this back at setting, but you might want to avoid certain neighborhoods if you know people are there that you might not want to see you tripping or something like that. There's nothing like bumping into a family friend who's taking their kids out to trick or treat and you're just like out of your mind. This should go without saying, but you know, we all have our punky inconsiderate phase. Just please don't mess with kids who are trick or treating. Don't try to scare kids or like give them a bad time. Halloween is supposed to be a good, joyous time for kids. It's already spooky enough. It's just a really shitty thing to do to taunt or harass kids, take anyone's candy, all that kind of stuff. Make sure the kids are having a safe time, and if you are having your own experience, have that separately. Teen, adult, and child Halloween experiences should just be very separate. I also don't think it's generally good to be tripping around kids. So last but certainly not least, in terms of my Halloween psychedelic adventure tips, is avoid cops. Do not talk to the police. Avoid calling them unless it is an absolute emergency. And certainly do not act weird where police might see you. If you act a little bit off kilter, you might not even be doing anything wrong. The police, for any reason, can harass and pester you or even use violence against you. So it's not good to interact with cops or dress up as cops. There's nothing that would stress me out more than if someone dressed up as a cop while I'm tripping. Like, no thanks. So there are just a few tips that I thought of for if you wanted to trip on Halloween. And of course, that is by no means an exhaustive list. I wish everyone have a good time and take these substances as safely as possible if you choose to do it. You should always be able to say no even if you have prior obligations, because at the end of the day, we just want to have a good time. Comment down below if there's any safety tips that you can think of that you might want to give other people, and let me know what your Halloween plans are, if you plan to trip or are doing anything interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Trip safe, ghouly spookonauts. I greatly appreciate the interbeings over at Patreon for making these videos possible. These interbeings, they keep me going, and I really can't thank you enough. I appreciate your continued support. You can get your own interbeing if you sign up at Patreon. Is that good?
Good stuff.
All right.
Candles out?